Jitendra, there's a question for you which says, Hair Originals is a very unique product. How do you create value for customers and employees?
Uh, okay, so let me give a bit about what we do at Hair Original. So we basically are into human hair extensions or human hair industry. This is basically driven by the raw material procured from the temples from the southern parts of India, and then we are selling the direct to consumer end products made out of it, which is a $14 billion market size. Talking about the value to the customers, so the biggest value that we want to give to our customers is obviously a trusted product, a product which is 100% natural, a product which is priced at the right price point because it is still a very unregulated industry. So what biggest value we want to give to a customer is that we provide right quality product at right price. And since this particular product, India has a value attached to it, there is a perceived notion that product coming from India in this category is going to be of superior quality. We try that, we live up to those standards and provide that quality product to our customers. Talking about employees, again, as a new stage startup, when I myself decided to quit my journey of doing a pretty decent job in an oil and gas in Paris, worked for Total, I basically wanted to do something for my country. They always say, you become even more patriotic when you are out of your country. So that was even more with me, I would say. And my dream in life is to at least, be a small change in at least 10,000 people's life. That is where I want to be a part of. So when I talk about value of the employees, the biggest value that I want is that we all grow together. That wherever the company is going, we also make especially our early stage employees part of our ecosystem, part of our stakeholding, and develop a culture where people feel, that they are working towards one common mission of building the first beauty brand, global beauty brand from India. And we all feel that we are doing it together. So this is the kind of value we are trying to create today.
I am tempted to ask a question to you, Jidan. I was watching one of the posts you had posted on LinkedIn some time back, was a video on how you're reaching out to women in the villages.
Soumya, Dr. Sunder Ram may conduct this session.
Sure, sir. Pleasure.
So Sunder, I request you please conduct this session. Good afternoon, Dr. Prabhat Pankaj.
Good afternoon to my co-panelist, Dr. Agrawal, old friend of mine, and good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Yeah.
And very good afternoon to all the participants in this webinar. Our topic relates to supply chain and more specifically green supply chain. So while I will be shortly handing over the baton to my co-panelists to engage in the meat of the discussions, my few cents of wisdom which I would like to lay on the ground is that when we talk of supply chain, it is a multidisciplinary subject. In terms of economics, we talk about efficiency. In terms of operations research, we talk about optimization of resources, basically a transportation problem. In terms of statistics or applied statistics, we talk about a lot of data which is being collected. In terms of customs stations and GST collections, etc., there's a lot of revenue, there's a lot of data, and there are a lot of bottlenecks also along the way. Now, one aspect of operations research is that in supply chain, we don't talk about the inventory management of one single entity. But when we talk about the optimization of the inventory levels across the supply chain, across the value chain, then it becomes the supply chain management in the sense that now data no longer sits in silos. which brings in the element of information technology and ERP systems all put together. When we apply this to the working environment, we find that logistics and supply chain related issues were spread across the jurisdictions of 17 ministries. And Gati Shakti is one such endeavor to remove the silos across these 17 ministries, and over a period of time, the efficiency gains are likely to come in. Some studies show that logistics costs, which ranged from about 13 to 14% of costs, are likely to reduce to single digits with this Gati Shakti, which is huge. Such a lot of noise is made on the media which covers the financial markets. But 25 basis point reduction or increase in the interest rates creates a huge hullabaloo. But reducing the supply chain costs and logistics costs from 13% to 9% over a period of time needs some more attention. Now, as far as India is concerned, we have had heavy dependence on railways with their cargo policy and being high, cargo freight rates being high to subsidize passengers. Those may be a thing of the past with dedicated freight corridors. Okay, some of the load may shift from the roads to the railways and to the air transport for perishables with Kisan Rail and Kisan Air, and also waterways, effective use of inland waterways. So the idea is to enhance the internal efficiencies as a key for reducing inflation. Reducing inflation is not just the burden of the RBI. Supply chain efficiencies also will reduce inflation. Last point before I hand it over to Dr. Raj Agrawal is that we have land borders with several countries, Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, etc., where there are custom stations. GST is by and large become streamlined, and across the country also we will be having more of pipelines, water pipelines, grid cables covering electricity and telecom and data. And last but not least, the financialization of supply chain related issues like electricity futures, oil and gas futures, etc. All put together, we are ahead for some very exciting times. The way supply chain management was done in the last 10 years may be very, very different from the way supply chain is going to be done in the next 10 years. And I look upon my esteemed panelists, co-panelists to shed some further light on the way ahead. Over to you, Dr. Raj Agrawal.
Thank you, Professor Ram. In fact, when we talk about this supply chain, then in a context of this G20, this is becoming very important. When we see the performance of Indian MSME, which are largely affected by logistics, which are largely affected by supply chain, which are largely affected by the slow movement, which is a result of this logistics and supply chain. Then, as you rightly quoted, that although this total cost increase, this is somewhere around 20%. Logistics obviously contributes 14%, as you said. And then within this small scale industries, this proportion is more. And supply chain, the constraint is also constituting. As you must be aware that there are the large number of studies, both at domestic level conducted, that how this export performance and specifically this export performance of this MSME can be enhanced. So these studies conducted by Ministry of Commerce, Government of India, international studies by OECD, World Bank, as well as this UNCTAD, they too have conducted several studies. So it has been noticed and it has been found out that if India is going to reduce the cost by this 10 to 15%, then there is a greater competitiveness of Indian products in international market, and export is going to be increased rapidly. So in a context of this G20, this is becoming very, very important. The kind of countries which are the member of G20, this Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, Republic of Korea, Mexico, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Turkey, United Kingdom, and United States and European Union. Then this supply chain, and that too in a context of this environmental issues, as well as this carbon emission issue, is becoming very, very important. So in that particular context, we know that G20 brings together the world's major and systematically important economies. And we know and we are aware that its members account for 85% of global GDP and 75% of global trade, and that consists of this 65% of India's population. So the context is becoming very, very important, because India has assumed presidency of G20, and the context of this supply chain management in a context of this sustainability is one of the important area. How this negotiation, how agreements, this is going to happen. We know that sustainability is the ability to retain or maintain something at a certain rate or level. This could be applicable to absolutely anything, from weight loss, diet, to the environment and planet Earth. In business, this has now, we are reading a lot of material, but in India there is a less progress, and this material is about environment, social and governance, ECG. This is a primary context in which business sustainability is becoming very, very important. And you see that a lot of articles which have published in this area. And then this has been coined that business sustainability in a context of business is doing business without negatively impacting environment, community or society as a whole. So therefore, this aspect of this supply is sustainable management by taking into consideration this negotiation in G20, and then by taking into consideration that how India can be benefited is becoming very, very important. So we know that if we need to do a profit, so in a context of this sustainability, this long-term profit, this is very important. And how we are going to emphasize on long-term profit from this financial point of view, as well as maintaining the sustainability aspect. We know that environmental sustainability, this is again very, very important, and how we are going to adopt circular economy practices, how we are going to minimize corporate carbon footprint, and how we are going to ensure supply chain sustainability to minimize its environmental burden by taking into account that there is going to be a societal sustainability. So in a broader term, from India's point of view, I think that this G20 has also adopted this MSME as one of the 4 focus area of cooperation among G20 countries. So there is a need that how India is going to develop, and India may have a chance to develop a kind of this comparative advantage in terms of exporting MSME products. If India is going to emphasize on reducing this logistics cost, if India is going to emphasize improving this supply chain management, and here this, as Professor Sunder has pointed out, that the role of this IT is also very crucial. Role of this new technology in a context of this sustainable development, this is also very important, because at present this 40% export, this is done by MSME in India. And we are targeting that how 50% export can be done by India, by seeing the 19 countries of this G20. We find that there is a good scope that how this MSMEs, they can contribute there in a context of this increasing export, how products are going to be identified, how systematic planning is going to be developed to reduce cost, how this collaboration and agreement among nations based on this comparative cost advantage, this is going to take place, and where India definitely is going to have an edge in increasing the exports of MSME products. My initial comments are like this, and further I will be happy to contribute.
Sunder, you are muted, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Agrawal. I now invite Dr. Prabhat Pankaj to provide his insights.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I would like to apologize for I'm not an expert in supply chain. I shared my view with Dr. Anuja that I'll be talking from the business school perspective. So I did some work on sustainability. The idea that I'm going to present here is that India's G20 commitment on carbon neutral, that is sustainability side, the carbon neutral economy and the circular economy, and how businesses school can play a role in that. So that's basically I would like to focus on, and also like to share a couple of examples of how we are doing it here in our institute. So especially focusing on the academic institutions. So as far as carbon neutral economy and circular economy is concerned, I mean, these are very, very important commitment from India's side, and India stands tall on this front, as it is very much evident that the net zero world by 2050 commitment, India is not lagging far behind, and it's putting its best into it. And it's also evident from the fact that more than 70 countries constituting about 80% of the global CO2 emissions, and these countries are actually constituting about 90% of GDP, and they have put commitment on the net zero on the table, and this is very, very significant. And India is actually leading from the front on this commitment. And then when we look at the private companies as they are committing about the net zero, is almost like more than 5,000 companies have already actually put in their commitment on that. So where is the business school role fits into it, and how we can contribute to this India's objective or India's leadership on this sustainability front, which actually constitutes about two things, especially the carbon neutral economy and towards the circular economy. So this is basically I would like to focus on. So it all started with the Panchamrit pronouncement that our Prime Minister has done in COP26 summit in Glasgow. And if you look at the Panchamrit, basically it enshrines the principles that can be looked upon by any business school for that matter in a practical sense of the term. The Samman is the first Panchamrit Prime Minister talked about, which is dignity and honor, and is very much doable. And business school must orient its entire functioning towards ensuring the dignity and honor of all the stakeholders. Second is Samvad. He talked about the engagement and dialogue. Of course, we know that is at the heart of collaboration, and this is very much needed to forge upon. The third he talked about was the Samriddhi, the shared prosperity. So it's not the prosperity of one business school or as an island we are doing our business, but we have to create a network. So instead of competition, if we embrace collaboration between the business schools, we will be better equipping our nation to take the leadership in G20. It also talked about Suraksha. Suraksha is actually regional and global security. And then Prime Minister talked about the Sanskriti and Sabhyata. So that is called the culture and the civilization that he talked about, Prime Minister talked about. So this is the kind of framework in which we have to talk about the Race to Zero campaign. And we need to contribute as an academic institutions. So for business school, the framework basically that comes from the United Nations. It comes from, yeah. Should I continue?
Carry on.
Yeah, okay. So it comes from the United Nations PRME framework. So as a business school, we need to look at PRME framework, from its practical applicability. The UN PRME actually raises the profile of sustainability in the business school. That's what we all need to look at. It talks about the 6 principles, which are very much closely looked at by the business school, and many business schools have started adopting these principles. The first principle, the United Nations PRME talks about. The PRME is actually the principles for responsible management education. So this is actually orienting the business school towards sustainability. So the first principle it talks about is the purpose. So when we talk about the purpose, it means that we have to develop the capacity of our students and our stakeholders like faculty and others to understand sustainability as the first thing, and second, the practice sustainability as the second layer of the thing. So that's the purpose that we all need to look into. Second, it talks about the values. So what is the value that we talk about? So we have to incorporate the values of sustainability into our activities, our curricula, and our practices. So sustainability is not something that we need to only teach, but it also needs to be practiced at the campus level. So business school closely need to look at how their activities are oriented towards sustainability, or their curriculum is guided and the practice is guided towards sustainability. That's the second principle. The third is it talks about is the method. So how to create educational framework, matrices, and the processes. So probably the idea of a green campus, or the idea of a zero plastic campus, something like that. I'm just giving a random example. So business school can choose and look at the different framework and the matrices that it has to develop for themselves and made responsible towards. The fourth principle PRME talks about research. So research is what business school is very familiar with, and therefore we need to engage in conceptual and empirical research, which actually talks about sustainability, and joining hands with industry and doing this sustainability research is a big area where the business school can contribute to this field. The fifth it talks about is the partnership. So of course, partnership is very critical, and I am particularly of the opinion that business schools should not operate in an environment of distrust with each other. We should operate in an environment of trust, and forum like AIMA has a big role to play in that, and they are actually doing a great job by bringing different business schools at one forum. But there is still a sense of skepticism that we can see, that the sense of competition, we need to convert that into a sense of cooperation, because that is going to create synergy among the business school, and we can use one another's resources, ideas, and develop the research framework. So partnership with the industries and the other institutions, that is what. And the sixth one that he talks about is a dialogue. Of course, we need to facilitate a lot of dialogue and debate among the stakeholders. So how we take it to the grassroots, how we take it to the village, how we take it to the different stakeholders, create platform, that is so very important. The last part I would like to talk about, a couple of minutes I want to devote, is what we actually do in this regard. So what we have done is that we have adopted the SDGs, and this is the common practice that other business schools also are looking into, for adopting the particular SDGs as their contributory area. So we have adopted SDG 1, that is called no poverty, SDG 3, good health and well-being, SDG 4, quality education, and SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. So the activities are actually designed around achieving these 4 SDGs, and contributing towards them involved the input, process, and the outcome framework. And this is what we have been using. And then the overarching framework that we are using for designing the activities and mapping it with the PRME SDGs is called the PAR framework, PAR framework, that we have evolved our own. So PAR framework is about the practice. So sustainability at the level of practice. So where are we mapping it? How are we doing it? So what is the input? What is the process? What is the outcome? So this is what we have been doing it. Second is called the advocacy. So advocacy is that how we are spreading this to our stakeholders, how we are creating a debating platform out of it. And third is the research. So, that's what PAR is all about, the practice, advocacy, and research. If I can actually outline in the end some of the flagship thing that we are doing, maybe an indicator of how the business schools can actually look into it. The couple of flagship programs that we have is, one is called the WISH program. So WISH is called the Winter Internship for Societal Happiness, where the students, it's a credit program that we have designed and is evaluated for the contributions that our students are making to the society in terms of sustainability, in terms of advocacy, in terms of research, in terms of supporting the NGOs. So all these kind of things that is happening under this program. The second that we have done is that we have developed something called the Happiness Laboratory. We call it H2O Laboratory. So Health and Happiness Laboratory. So this Happiness Laboratory has a technical software where we have the electrophotonic imaging technology installed in our laboratory, and where we can scan the individual and we can do the 7 chakras positioning. We can tell the individuals where your chakras are located and how deviated the chakras are and how aligned the chakras are. We also give them their stress profile. We also give them the energy flow in their body in different organs. And then we have developed a course called Science of Wellbeing and Happiness. So this is where we are contributing to the SDG on well-being in a big way. So, and this is one big research area for us. And we are actually publishing articles in Times of India. We are doing advocacy. We are actually lecturing at conducting workshops for the industries, top leaders from the industries. We are also doing it for the CEOs and also many business schools and students and faculty. We have been constantly doing this. This is one of our expertise, and we are contributing that in a big way. Adopting the school nearby for teaching the underprivileged is also a way to contribute to the SDGs. And networking is, of course, part of the larger network. Becoming the PRME is a good platform where the business school can actually network and can make a difference at the country level. So this is where Narsi Monji has taken a very big role, and we have joined them at the India level. So, these are some of the ways, and if there is more discussion on this aspect, then I can contribute and I can give some more idea about how it can be done. So these are simple outline I have given, where the two objective of G20 as far as sustainability is concerned is the net zero, achieving net zero in circular economy, and how it is linked to the SDGs, and how UN PRME is playing a role, and then how UN PRME principles can be adopted by business schools, and giving an example of, my business school, how we are doing it. So this is exactly what I have spoken.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pankaj. And I shall now turn to Dr. Raj Agrawal. Dr. Agrawal, you had mentioned about the contribution of MSMEs. Now, as far as supply chain issues are concerned, what are the problem areas of MSMEs vis-a-vis dealing with their large customers as suppliers, and what is the role of what are the areas of concern for MSMEs while dealing with international customers? So for domestic markets, how do they deal with large customers, and international markets, how do they deal with international customers from the problem areas of supply chain point of view?
Dr. Sunder, this is the crucial problem, and when we see in a context of sustainability, and when we see in a context of this G20 countries, means that global context, then this is becoming very, very critical. First of all, Professor Prabhat Pankaj has given a very good idea that how business schools can develop the model of sustainability and how sustainability can be a culture at higher education. So definitely this is a praiseworthy that a business school has adopted this kind of approach, and then this is going to be a part, or slowly, although there is a lot of talk in new education policy and earlier also, and this papers, this electives, and then this core papers on sustainability that have been introduced. We too have introduced one program on sustainability. Further, we are going to introduce more and more program in this area. So there is a growing awareness But as far as this adopting sustainability in a business is considered, so this is one of the real challenge, really real challenge. Definitely, this culture, this awareness, this is going to definitely help us. But in a context of this SME, so if we are going to assess and analyze its origin, its growth, that how this from a traditional village industries, these MSMEs, they are coming, how they are going to provide the largest employment in India, how they are contributing in GNP of India, how they are contributing in the total export of India, and how even in this COVID situation they were able to sustain and grow. And further, definitely this government has taken several incentives, positive incentives, in terms of providing financial assistance, in terms of providing collateral, in terms of providing this various kind of the security protection. But when we talk about G20, then context is becoming competitive. And when we say competitive, then definitely this sustainability is one of the area by which there is a assessment that India can get a advantage over their competitors, rivals, because the kind of product which India is exporting and manufacturing, India is having an absolute advantage, like gem and jewelry, like this is what handicrafts. India is having an absolute advantage. So in that particular context, this is what that, but the disadvantage, as Professor Sunder has said, that this supply chain management. So this is a issue of this management, this is the issue of this policies, and then this logistics. So this has given us a high cost. So here in this area, there are the several steps which are taking, which we have already taken. But if we are going to take steps in a very corrective manner means that where this digitization, where this IT, where this negotiation. So by taking into context the kind of product or kind of procurement, because you know that India is also one of the largest procuring country. And the government is one of the largest procurement agency. So, and then emphasis is on green procurement. So when we talk about this green procurement, so then obviously this question of this green supply chain management. So when we are taking all these corrective steps, so, and then there is also a talk of ESG. So then there is very important that when we are negotiating with G20 countries, so how we are going to take this particular point in our negotiation, because you know that this G20 country forum was created for economic cooperation. And slowly, this has reached up to that stage that this agreements, and in a context of this export-import, these are going to be signed. So we need to identify areas where we can have some kind of this advantage, and we can benefit in terms of long-term profit. We can benefit in terms of this supply, in terms of sustainability. So therefore, in my opinion, this MSME is one of the sector, and luckily this among 4 areas, this MSME that has been identified as one of the crucial area for the purpose of negotiation, for the purpose of agreement. So how we are going to reduce this bottlenecks of this supply chain management, how we are going to make our supply chain management more and more green, how we can take up this challenges of this sustainable development within this supply chain management. So as Professor Prabhat Pankaj was saying, that not only in education, but this kind of culture is need to be created. Although there is a lot of talk, like as I said, that ESG, or there is a lot of talk about this green environment, but in practice, when we see, so we find that results are not very encouraging, very motivating, because for last 20 years, this transaction cost, this is 20% higher. Even countries like Philippines, Vietnam, Bangladesh, they are having a lower cost. And we know that specifically in textile market, where India was having a monopoly, so these countries were able to acquire better position than India. So something in practice which is going to be visible needs to be done.
Dr. Agrawal. I turn to Dr. Prabhat Pankaj, and that is the mantra for sustainability has become the 3R formula: reuse, recycle, and reduce. So my question to both the panelists is that disposal of plastic waste is a big problem, and electronic waste is a big problem. So any ideas from the co-panelists on how this can be taken forward? Dr. Pankaj first. Recycling of plastic waste.
Yeah, recycling. There are technologies. I'm not an expert in this area, so I won't be able to say anything specifically about how it is being done. Maybe I'll request Professor Raj to talk about it. But this is very important aspect, as you are saying, that practice of recycling, reuse is basically about the circular economy that we are talking about. And there are many countries in the world I know which has actually making a lot of money out of the waste. And the waste can be recycled and it can be converted into, and waste is going to be a big issue everywhere in the world. And there are many countries which are buying waste. That also is happening on this earth. And therefore, waste management needs to be developed. And probably I will say that waste management practices needs to be strengthened. And India has the potentiality. They can talk about waste management in a big way, and it will benefit the country definitely in this whole cycle of reuse and recycling and things like that. As far as plastic is concerned, it's not. I don't see any reason or any future where there will be zero plastic everywhere, because the plastic is integral part of life. It has actually entered into our fibers. I may be sounding pessimistic, but maybe some technology will come which will replace plastic. Then it might happen. But reducing the use of plastic, or maybe differentiating the different kinds of plastic is going to make a lot of difference. So that kind of policy might help. And there is also a job problem as far as the developing countries like India is concerned, because job is if you start talking about any sector where the bad goods are being produced, bad in the sense that it has more externalities and it started hurting the environment, and therefore you start putting some kind of tariff on that, some kind of policy on that to reduce the bad production. Then it also starts hurting the employment channel, because if you look at plastic, the plastic per se is actually giving a lot of employment. So the moment you start talking about this, so these are all complicated issues. And if you go by the basic theory of how environment plays out in different countries, we know that the environmental Puget curves, it talks about the reusable and the environmental quality upgradation happens only after a certain level of income is achieved by the country. So per capita income, if you compare with the rest of the world where these things are being happening, our per capita income is still very far low. And therefore, we have the problem of poverty. We also have the problem of unemployment. And therefore, it is not as simple as it looks like. So a turning point of the EKC hypothesis for developing countries may become faster because of two reasons. So if you can emphasize, number one, on educating people on the benefits. So even the mere educating people on the benefits has actually changed quite a lot of scenario. So educating people, advocacy is very important. So advocacy has to be done at different levels, including the grassroots. Even the remotest of the area, the advocacy has to penetrate. And that is number one. And number two, which has worked in favor of the developing countries, is the technological development, because a lot of environmental issues and problems are sorted out with the technology, appropriate technology, the green technology that has been. But developing green technology is also involving a lot of cost. So, question here is that who is going to bear that cost and all? And there is also at the international level something called the environmental protection. So there is something called environmental protectionism going on. So that is the flip side of the whole story, where the developing countries are actually using a high standard for their environment. Let's say the environmental quality measurement in developed countries are very, very high, and they are even much above the WTO standards. So they, let's say, for example, phytosanitary and sanitary standards. So phytosanitary and sanitary standards, as prescribed by the WTO, which is developed by the Codex Alimentarius, is found much lower for a country like US, France, and other countries. And they don't actually care about this phytosanitary and sanitary standards. They actually have evolved their own standards, which is much, much higher. Now, when the developing countries try to push some kind of supply chain, some kind of goods and services produced in developing countries towards the developed country, so what is happening is that even the WTO standard, maintenance of WTO standard by the developing countries is becoming very, very problematic, because they are not able to do it, lack of money, and a lot of capital is required for that. But even that is not sufficient for developing countries. So what the developed country is using, they're using it as a protectionism, a kind of protectionism. So over a period of time, when environmental issues are being talked about from the last 20 years, let's say 30 years. So if you look at the trade, how it has happened between the developed and developing countries, it has grossly gone in favor of the developed countries. So it is actually a discriminatory thing that is happening for the developing countries. For developing countries like
we've got to move to our next point.
Yeah.
And that is, Mr. Deendyalan has raised a very important point about plastics, and a lot of them used in packaging material, which brings us to the idea that there is a new profession or a new community which can open up, which is waste aggregators. For example, our transport and road minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, has taken a lot of initiative. There is an institute called Indian Road Research Institute in Roorkee, which is trying to use the plastic bags and PET bottles and shred them and put them into the asphalt for the roads. Apart from that, we've also seen that some companies are using plastic waste and they are manufacturing sports shoes and bags and soft bags, suitcases and briefcases, which look very good. So waste aggregators is an important function in the supply chain, as we see in the emerging economy. Similarly, municipalities are asking citizens to segregate waste into wet and dry. The wet waste goes into composting, which is used as fertilizer in the rural areas. And the dry waste, essentially plastic-based, can be recycled for making footwear, etc. Now, Mr. Agrawal, there's a question. Dr. Agrawal, there's a question which says that this G20, is it an opportunity for India as a takeoff point for its external sector? Or is it an event which will fade away after 1 year? From our topic perspective.
Yeah, from the topic perspective, actually, this depends when you are going to convert all these negotiation into a opportunity, and when these negotiations are itself becoming a challenge for you. So, how this is going to be tackled? How crucial role India can play. Prof. Prabhat Pankaj was talking about WTO, and in WTO, this environment became an issue, but not a big issue in terms of this implementation. This non-sanitary measures, they have been used as a non-tariff barriers, because developed countries, they were in an advantageous position because of this membership, because of their strength. So whenever they realize that there is a need to impose some kind of restrictions as far as trade is considered with developing countries, so they are not in a position to impose tariff barriers, so it is better to impose non-tariff barriers. So, like in case of this shrimp industry, this has happened, and this case continued up to 25 years, and India was having a complete advantage because India was the largest shrimp exporter. So this shrimp export that has suffered very severely. And here they have used this non-tariff barriers. So there are these several kind of product and services where simply because they were in a position to impose these kind of barriers, they have done it. Now this WTO, its negotiation, its implementation, these are more polarized. So therefore, they are not in a position to impose more and more tariff as well as non-tariff barriers. But whenever they are getting opportunities, they are doing it. Now, coming on this particular context, so what is important that how you are going to position yourself and how you are going to negotiate yourself. Like in current context, this rupee trade between India and Russia. And then rupee trade is also going to be signed with some other countries. So this rupee trade is becoming beneficial to India. Maybe political reasons or diplomatic reasons are there, but definitely this is what that rupee trade is becoming very, very beneficial. So this rupee trade is against the philosophy of free trade. Likewise, you see that if you are going to compete with the 20% increase in your cost with these kind of 19 countries, so obviously you are going to be out of market. You cannot compete with them. So here one has to identify that in which countries these products, Indian products, are demanded, and where, being a president or being this assuming a presidency, as how bilaterally India can get from other countries, means that when you are going to give them something, so you have to take something. And so what are the items which you can take, which you needed most? You are importing from China, you are importing from other part of the world. So here this one study very good done by ICRIER, I think Professor Goel. So they have identified certain items, certain areas, and even this FIO, this is also doing a study in that particular area, that what are the items specifically belonging to small scale sectors which are important, which could be exported. So which could be talked. But what is important and what is critical in that particular area, there is a lot of talk about sustainability. As I said, there is a lot of talk this green procurement. There is a lot of talk about this ESG. But in policy, you see, there is nothing which has been taken into consideration. It is simply a hard business that this is the items which we can export. These are the items which we can import. So means that by negotiation, this tariff and non-tariff barriers are going to be reduced this much. But here, when we see long-term point of view, so within these organizations which are really engaged in conducting research, Ministry of Commerce is engaged in negotiating this trade agreement. This Sherpa that too have been appointed. Mr. Amitabh Kant is a Sherpa. He too is directly involved. So what is important and significant that how this green procurement part, this green supply part, how this is going to be taken into care. Now you see that what is most appreciable, that this supply chain issue that has been taken into consideration. Because several studies have been conducted, but there is no talk of this environmental issue. There is no talk about this green supply issue. So definitely when we are doing this negotiation and when we see that we can have an advantage over it, so there is a need to adopt that. There is need to be to make a part of this implementation. So then India can assume some kind of importance, some kind of advantage. Otherwise, you see that every year presidency is the next year is going to somewhere else, and then we'll talk, we'll discuss, and then everything will finish.
Which brings us to the last 10 minutes. My next question, again to Dr. Agrawal, is that there is this talk about India's strategic interest in the Chabahar port in Iran, which will help us to take our exported goods to Europe via Chabahar, via Azerbaijan, to the Baltic coast as an alternative. And the second is recently there's a dialogue with Russia saying that in the east coast of Russia, that is Vladivostok near Japan, they will give us oil and gas from there. So our ships can go from there. Now, this type of new trade routes, it's called the Arctic route, So India gets a channel through Russia. So are these talks a reality in the near term, or is it just going to be a pipe dream at the moment? Now, this becomes geopolitics. There is a, Tajikistan, Iran, Pakistan, India pipeline which went into limbo because of the geopolitical tension. So like that, in that context, will the supply chains get released of their pressure by these moves?
Actually, Professor Sunder, I was reading 2-3 studies, very interesting studies, which are related to, your question is related completely to that particular aspect. These are related to free trade, related to mercantilism, related to, this is what regional agreement, related to bilateralism, and then WTO also, right? So most of the countries, those who have been benefited by trade, and after 1991, this trade in India has become a big component as far as generation of GDP, generation of foreign exchange is considered. So it has been realized that whatsoever policies were in your favor, so most of the countries, they have adopted that kind of approach. Means that in earlier when this imposing tariff by UK was in their interest, so they imposed heavy tariff on Indian products. So this Indian export was completely, this is pre-British period. Indian products were completely dismantled as far as this export of Indian product was considered. Indian market was flooded with the UK product. Likewise, recently in manufactured item or technology item, they were having the advantage. So this is what that all kind of this tariffs were reduced, and then this about this bilateralism through this multilateralism, or even in WTO they are having an advantage also, right? So means that these kind of this agreement and these kind of this routes, this is definitely this one of the important area which is going to facilitate trade. And trade of this physical goods. There's no doubt this digital economy that has also reduced the cost considerably. But there is a scope. There is a very wide scope of reducing cost. And here this politics cannot be avoided. So that's why that this India is developing very good relation with countries like Iran, this Middle East countries. So India can get a route. India can, otherwise this going towards this Pacific or going towards this Pacific Ocean, there is going to be a huge increase in a cost. So definitely in a long run, as far as this physical movement of goods are considered, so these routes are very, very important, because this cost is in trade, foreign trade, this cost is very, very important point. Because you see that this Chinese product, this common product where India was having the advantage, their cost is this 10%, 15% lower than Indian product. And they were able to get the access in a market. Indian product were not able to get the access in a market. So this is something which is becoming very unfavorable as far as India's this composition of this export is considered. Considered.
There is a context there in the sense that South Korea, yes, their cement factories are very close to the ports, whereas in India the cement factories are located all over the country.
Precisely.
And ironically, it was found that cement exports from Korea to the Middle East are there, but cement exports from India to Middle East is less because of this transportation cost. Similarly, if you look at China, most of the factories are located in the south and the east, which are not landlocked. So as a result of that, our transportation minister, Mr. Gadkari, and when Mr. Suresh Prabhu was the Minister of Railways, they took up the theme of port-led development. Port-led development, which is why you see the Eastern Dedicated Freight Corridor and the Western Dedicated Freight Corridor getting prominence. We have the last 3 minutes, so we have 1.5 minutes for each of the panelists to give their closing remarks. So, Mr. Pankaj, Prabhat.
Yeah, sure. So, Central Asia market is very important, and G20 negotiations are really, as Dr. Agrawal has rightly said, negotiation is going to hold the key. That's number one. Second, geopolitics is, of course, going to come on way, because without geopolitics, nothing is going to happen. Central Asia market is important for India, and India has to bypass Pakistan some way, because the geopolitics as of now, as it stands today, we cannot say that India will be comfortable ties with the Pakistan. So it has to find some route to bypass. And Java port, kind of relationship with Iran and access to Afghanistan is also very important for India. So therefore, all these part of geopolitics, and a lot will depend upon how India is maintaining relationship, further strengthening its relationship with Russia, and how it is going to play out vis-a-vis China. So that's one important question that is going to be there on the table right now. But India is playing very cautiously. There's no doubt on that. And even the U.S. relationship with India is going up and down, because U.S. interest is being compromised by the decisions, some of the decisions that has been taken by India. And India has a different stand. Its international foreign policy actually is taking a different shape, and it's going on a different principle, and therefore India's might is going to emerge if India comes stronger on negotiation tables. That's what I strongly feel. And Central Asia market is going to be really, really critical for India. A G20 leadership is going to prove very critical.
Okay, Dr. Agrawal, closing sentence.
Actually, Professor Sunder, this point Prabhat said is definitely a very important point. But in my opinion, what is significant, that kind of this model, economic development model which you have adopted, because you see that when I was a student, then there was a lot of talk. There was a book, Small is Beautiful, Sumakar. Then there was a book, Limits to Growth, published by Club of Rome. Then this North-South dialogue was started. Then this South-South dialogue was started, right? Now, during that time also, there was a talk of this sustainability. There was a talk of all these challenges which we are facing. But now these challenges have become a reality. So in that particular context, earlier India was having no say or very little say. Now India is having a lot of say, because people think, or countries think, that India is a powerful nation. So first, what is essential for us to be a very, very strong, domestically, very, very strong. When we are going to have a good growth rate, we are very strong, then we can negotiate. Otherwise, nobody is going to listen us. So this strongness, this powerful diplomacy and powerful politics within this nation, this is very, very significant. And definitely, this is not only G20, but what is important, that there are the various forums where India is a member. Or India is having a leading role. So how various kind of these agreements can be negotiated, implemented. So that's very, very important. Very, very important in that particular context.
Okay. Thank you very much. And in order to be on time and hand it back to the organizers, I'll just succinctly put one or 2 points across. One is that as the leader of G20, what India brings in is credibility. Okay. Vis-a-vis China, India brings in a lot of credibility, which means that One Belt, One Road initiative, which started with grand fanfare, it is breaking down because of the issue of credibility. At the same time, China, which had captured the African markets and trapped them in various debt, the debt trap. Now, a renewed interest has come from a lot of African countries to look at India for supplies. That is one thing. And second thing is as far as green energy is concerned, green hydrogen. Like electric vehicles, it was a dream 10 years back. Today it has become a reality. We see wheels on the ground. Similarly, green hydrogen, there is a talk that India will be a global exporter. Okay, because we have the solar energy to convert this water into green energy. So on these points, plus the credibility aspect in terms of human rights, democracy, and India's aid programs across the world, it's given us a lot of credibility. And just like the 1990s gave India the push for growing its IT sector, let us now hope that this G20, because we in India used to think only of domestic markets. IT sector showed us that we can supply to the world. Similarly, this newfound confidence, defense exports, for example, railway project exports, has given a lot of confidence to the Indian economy. And now our domestic supply chain and our international supply chain should now work seamlessly. Plus the reduction in the GST rates, etc., over a period of time will go a long way. So with these words, I hand it back to the organizers, and thanks to my co-panelists, Dr. Raj Agrawal and Dr. Prabhat Pankaj.
Thank you, Professor Sunder. Thank you, Prabhat.
Thank you, sir.
Professor Prabhat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to see you, sir. After
Yeah, it was indeed an in-depth discussion on the theme of partnership for sustainable development challenges of supply chain. Thank you so much, Professor Sundaram, for moderating the session and also sharing your very valuable inputs and views. Professor Prabhat Pankaj, Dr. Raj Agrawal, thank you so much for joining and enriching all of us here. Thank you so much. And we come to an end of this third session. It's my pleasure to now invite Ms. Sangeeta Menon. She is Publishing Relationship Manager, Emerald Publishing, India.